And just so we're on the same page, I did pull a little dictionary definition of a constraint at the top. So here's the way I think about a constraint in any business. You have a pipe of water that's trying to flow through, and all that water is your new business and your operations. And anytime that pipe is either clogged, or if it has a valve and it's shut off, or if it's slightly closed, that would be a constraint. So some people use the term constraint, some people use the term bottleneck. Basically, it's the understanding that there's really only 5, if we break it down, there's really only 5 areas of the business that we need to fix. And the truth is, just to set the stage, that all 5 will always be a constraint to some degree. I'm just trying to have an understanding at any given day, any given week, which constraint right now is the biggest to fix. So just to set expectation, the goal is not to remove, I think it's personally impossible to remove constraints. That is business. Business will always have some constraint. There will always be some bottleneck. There will always be some issue to solve. So to promise hey, if you fix these 5 things, your business is going to be fine, that's not what business is. That's always solving problems. That being said, it is very important to understand what the 5 constraints are, so that every week you can sit down and say, okay, this is my biggest constraint this week, so I'm going to do this to change it. Because I have a firm belief, especially in today's landscape, where there are more distractions than ever, that a lot of business owners, I think the cool kids use the term fake work. And I think a lot of business time is fake work. I'm just being busy doing things rather than actually fixing and growing the business. And so there's really only 5 areas where you can fix. And I always try to audit, anything that I'm doing outside of these 5 areas is fake work. It's not actually growing the business. So the 5 constraints. We have demand, which is your lead for our businesses. That's your lead generation. So not enough people know you exist. We have conversion, which means I have people that are raising their hands, they're just not coming in my door. Or for my online folks, they're not booking a call. And one other expectation I always try to set with all my presentations, really all my coaching calls in general, group coaching calls, is one of the filters that I run through when I build out a presentation is this has nothing to do with you are not a unicorn, meaning just because you're online versus offline, just because you run small group versus large group, just because you're in California versus Boston, it's business. It applies to any business. So to say that, well, I run this model or I'm located here, I think that's a big growing point from business ownership. Is you're not special. And I don't say that to you guys. I just say that in general. It's not. Business is business, and these are the constraints of business. So it doesn't matter where you are, what model you run, who you serve. None of that matters. Now, when we get into the weeds of things, for example, the words I use to attract somebody in my demand, that's where it's going to change. The words I use to attract a 35-year-old versus a sports performance gym versus a 50-plus, special pops gym, the words I use are different, but we all still need to create demand. So just to go back, demand conversion is your people know you exist, you're getting leads in the door, they're just not coming in. And then you have the one that is probably, as you grow, your biggest problem, which is retention. And that's basically, as you all know, clients leaving in maybe below your normal churn rate or your normal leg above your normal churn rate. The 4th constraint is your delivery and your capacity. So that's the model in which you run. That's how many clients you can serve in your current constraint of the model, the square footage you have. Everybody has certain constraints, right? If you only have 1,000 square feet versus if you have 3,000 square feet, that's a square footage constraint. If you run large group training, your constraint is much larger, your capacity is much larger than if you run a small group model. So we'll break that down. And then, of course, the final bottleneck is us as owners and our team, the people that run. So that would be everything from how you operate as an owner to how your team operates. So the goal today is to really break down those 5 constraints, make sure you know how to identify which one of the constraints for you is most important, and then give you some strategies to implement. So if you would like to go through an audit, and I won't go through this kind of with each person, but you can kind of go through it on your own. These are the questions to identify how you know which constraint is off track. And again, to be clear, these are all going to be off track to some degree, right? These are all going to be off to some degree. I don't meet a single gym owner who's like, yeah, I'm crushing all 5 of these and it's great. That does not exist. What I'm looking for is, it's kind of like in the medical world, right? If you work in the emergency room and somebody comes in and they have like 17,000 things wrong with them, you're going to prioritize the one that's more life or death as opposed to like the cut on their arm, right? And so business is not life or death, but it is prioritizing which of these is most off track so that I can prioritize my week to fix these. So constraint audit. This is 5 basic questions that I would always want to know the answers to at any given time in my business. So number 1 is, how many leads did we get last month? And broadly speaking, I'm going to break down all 5 constraints in detail, but just trying to set the stage here with making sure we're aware of what each one is. A broad way to know if that's on or off track is your client goal times 3 to 4. So if you're trying to get 5 clients, you're probably going to need 20-ish leads. So if you said, how many new leads did I get last month? And your answer is 5, well, then you're 15 away from, or only 25% there, however you want to think about it. That's a pretty big constraint if you're only generating 5 leads and you need 15 to 20. Conversion is what percent or rate, however you want to think about it, of those leads came in your door. So if I generated 30 leads, what percent of your leads came in the door? And one of my ultimate goals and we were talking about this last night, I think it's super important. One of the ways that I know you've elevated as a gym owner is when you stop sharing individual client scenarios. Not that I don't care about every single client, to be fair, like just to emphasize. It's not that I'm saying I don't want you to care about your clients. What I'm saying is, when we're troubleshooting business, I don't care about that one lead that didn't convert, or that one lead that didn't respond, or this, I'm going to zoom in on this one client situation. That to me is like very entry level business. And one of my personal goals with the accelerator and Project 500 is, I need you to come up to like 10 to 20,000 feet and start looking at it as, I got 30 leads, 10 of them came in. Awesome. Or I met with 10 and 8 signed up. Awesome. Once they're a client, get to know them and build relationships, by all means. Like, I think we do a pretty good job about knowing each of you and what your business is and all that. But like, we, just like you, have lead targets every month, appointments booked every month. Like, I don't have time, you don't have time to zoom into every single lead and be like, well, this lead didn't respond. Why didn't they respond? I sent them this. It's like, there's way too many fish in the sea. We got to move on, and we got to think of this business as a holistic view, not just these one-off individual scenarios. And the reason I say that is you will drive yourself absolutely bonkers if you don't think about it that way. So when I'm looking at, okay, how many leads did I generate? Is that a demand bottleneck or a demand constraint? If I'm generating plenty of leads, but let's say, for example, 30 leads came in over the course of May, but only 5 of them came in the door, that tells me that your follow-up is your biggest constraint. And you need to get way better at follow-up, which we'll talk about. Okay, so lead to conversion rate, that's again a percentage. If I generated 30 leads and 10 came in the door for the initial appointment, that would mean I have 30% conversion rate. Your retention audit is 2 numbers, your leg and your churn percentage. So your leg is the average length of engagement. This is a pretty hard number to track, and it's not one that I look at on a weekly basis. It's probably more like a monthly thing, but it's a very simple calculation. It's just, frankly, a lot of people don't take the time to do it. And you can build in, like all of you probably have done, or most of you have done, you can build in, tools to automate this and to have it auto-calculate for you. But your leg is basically taking every member that you have, every client that you have, and keeping track of how many months they've been active. So it's basically getting refreshed every month and averaging that. Because when we think of retention, we're like, oh, it's not a problem. I only have 1 or 2 people leave. I only have 3 or 4 people leave. Or I have Susie that's been with me 10 years. But in reality, if you were to average it, remember, your leg is also factoring in ones, meaning that client that just joined this month is in month 1. That client that left after 3 months is a 3 and never made it to a 4, right? That client that did a 30-day trial and never converted is a 1. So you factor in all that as an average. And again, it's a more holistic view. It's not a number that I would obsess over week to week, but it is probably the best number to look at your retention rate holistically. The monthly number is your churn percentage, which is basically saying what percentage of clients left. So if I started with 100 clients and 5 clients left, I have 5% churn. Now that number is very important to know because that is the difference between knowing how many new clients you need and not. So for example, if your churn rate is 5%, which is about average, what we see, 5% churn. So if you got 100 clients, you're going to lose 5 people. No matter what you do, no matter how awesome you are, people are going to move, job losses, financial changes, time, schedule, whatever. That's 5, right? So 5 people are going to leave. That means you need to generate 5 new clients just to break even, just to be at 0. And so your new client goal probably in that business is closer to 8 to 10, right? So knowing your churn percentage, and it's a percentage, that's another thing. I try to pull in common scenarios that I hear in coaching calls and stuff. Another growth opportunity for y'all to consider is think of things in percentages rather than in amounts. Because when you started this business, you had 25 clients or 10 clients or 50 clients. And now you have 75 clients, 100 clients, 150 clients, 200 clients. The reality is you're maybe used to only seeing 1 to 2 people leave if you have 50 clients. Well, now you have 150 clients and you're going to see 6 to 8 people leave every month. The percentage is the exact same. It's the same percentage. It's just the amount of people is higher. And it's the flip side on the demand side. When you started out, you might only have needed 10 leads every month to grow because you weren't losing that many people. You were kind of the face of everything, and you were getting out of those 10 leads, 3 to come in the door, all 3 bought, and you were happy. Now, most of you, and I say you as in like the gym owner average here, are going to need 30 to 50 leads every month, like clockwork, minimum, just to grow. And so the numbers can be hard to think about, but it's a percentage. They're all percentages. So when we look at the delivery capacity, this is basically looking at, and this one's arguably the toughest to look at as a constraint, and frankly, to be fair, is probably the least of your concerns in the short term. It doesn't mean it's not a long-term constraint, but it is potentially short term. I would make a strong point if I was betting that this is the lowest of your concerns, and it's more a big change, which is the model that you run, the schedule capacity, basically how many clients can you add to your current model. So if you have 1,500 square feet, you're running small group personal training, you're going to have X amount of sessions a day, you can service 150 active clients. You currently have 100. That means you could grow 50 clients without really changing anything. So I would argue that's not a constraint because I can go fix the other constraints, add 50 people, and that constraint really doesn't get challenged. Where it gets challenged is you run into situations where you have 1,000 square feet and you're running large group training and you have 100 clients and you got room for nobody else. and you either have to add staff, add time, add square footage, that then becomes a constraint. So that constraint is more of a holistic or maybe long-term like business makeover fix versus the others I would say are more week to week, month to month. And then the last one is the owner and the team, and the question for that is a little bit more fluffy. It's not as measurable, which is basically take a week like this, right? Take a week like this, even this half week that you're gone from the gym, and ask yourself what happens when you're gone. And if the operation can still run with you not there, then that's probably not a constraint that I would focus on. If you have to shut down and the gym can't run at all, then that's a pretty hefty constraint. So again, all of these are going to be constraints at any given time. We just want to make sure that we're fixing them. Okay, so we're going to break them down. Demand is all about figuring out what are going to be your repeatable lead sources. Okay, following the monthly marketing plan. All of you now, regardless of whether you're in Accelerator or Project 500, you have access to the monthly marketing plan. And I don't expect you to implement all of that, but I do expect for you to pick a consistent chunk of that and implement it month after month. That is, at this point, if I look, my personal goal, whether this is your goal or not, is up to you, but my personal goal for you is that demand no longer becomes a bottleneck. Because if I look 2 or 3 stages ahead from where most of you are at, those gyms don't focus on demand. The other constraints are more pressing. And it's because demand is very, it's very playbook focused, meaning it's very like just do the work and run your ads, get your emails and texts out there, implement the marketing plan. It's very like these playbooks work, implement these playbooks. There's less of like an art to it. And so eventually, and maybe some of you are already there, like leads no longer become the bottleneck. You're generating plenty of leads. You just run into the conversion constraint, which is, okay, now I'm generating leads, but they're not engaging, they're not responding, nobody's booking appointments, which as some of you shared with your check-in process, your win, when we went around with the wins, is installing your follow-up system. And again, I think a healthy target right now in the landscape is, depending upon source, around 20 to 30% of your leads should be coming in the door. It's a little bit skewed if you have a higher lead count, but broadly speaking, for the average user, it's about 20 to 30% of your leads should be booking appointments. And again, in the next section, we're gonna break all these down and I'll give you actual strategies to implement. Retention is all about making sure we have a standard client journey. So I think of this as, I just last week got to watch my twins, for those that don't know, are going to be turning 4, and my wife signed them up to do hip hop, and they did their hip hop dance recital, and it was a minute and a half of choreographing 3-year-olds to follow step by step by step, and you can imagine how that went. It was obviously super cute and phenomenal, but that's how I think of the client experience. Every step is choreographed. This, like, they literally, like, this is the hand motion, this is like, everything is choreographed, right? So there's no winging it. That is the point we want to get to. And again, that's where when we step back as an operator, that's where I would like us to get to, is I'm thinking about the client journey as a whole, and what do I want my client journey to be? Not, I have this one client and this is their scenario, what do I do for them? That again is like a early operator. And again, like, we can help solve that problem, but I want to take it kind of above and say, well, what's your client journey? Because everybody should be going through the same client journey. Capacity, again, that usually comes back to your session structure, your pricing, and the model that you run. The best example I have of this, we're actually going to see them next week for our boardroom event. Melanie and Jason Ash, great operators up in Columbus, Ohio. And when I first started working with them, they were around 250 or 200 to 250 clients, and they were at quote capacity. And the reason they were at capacity was because that they were running hour and 15-minute long sessions. And all we did was take the session duration and cut it down to 45 minutes. And they added like 30 some odd % to their capacity without changing a single other variable. So that would be an example where they had demand dialed in. They're great at follow-up. Jason, if you don't know Jason Ash, is like, take my type A personality, multiply it times 5, square root it, and take the infinity, and then he's maybe close to that, and probably above that. He's a data nerd, so like he knew to a T how many clients he could fit. But they were just blind to the constraint of it shouldn't, like we can't have one coach working with one session for an hour and 15 minutes. That's just not feasible in this model. So that's the only variable we changed, and that's no longer a constraint. Now we can go add 50, 60 more clients, no problem. And then of course the owner, we're gonna implement making sure we have hiring, delegating, and knowing your numbers. So my goal now is to take through each constraint and make sure you have a handful of action items for each one. Hopefully that first part you were able to, and if you don't, once I'm done my presentation, obviously we'll shift to questions. And so I think goal number one for me today is make sure you know the 5 constraints, which hopefully I did a good job defining those, and then make sure you know how to determine if one of those, like which one of those is the constraint. So now you can go into, okay, demand's my constraint, here's what I'm gonna do to fix it. Or conversion's my constraint, here's what I'm gonna do to fix it. So with demand, that is all your monthly marketing plan and your ideal client. So I'm gonna focus a little bit more on the ideal client today because I think this is a sleeper. And if I watch the gyms that are growing really quickly right now, it is the gyms that have, a lot of them are the gyms that have taken this to heart. So if we were sitting in this room 3, 4, 5 years ago, you could say that I train busy adults that want to look better, feel better, move better. And you would be totally fine with your messaging. And now everybody in your town says that, and there's 17 different options that say that. So your ideal client needs to be 3 to 5 layers deeper than that. And again, if I look at the gyms that are doing really well with demand and conversion, they are speaking to one particular person. Now, I should really bold this sentence right here. There we go. Bold and underline it. This is not who you currently serve. It is who you want to serve. It's a big difference there. Because everybody, when they think about this, they think about their current clients. Well, I have this client, I have this 85-year-old, and I have this 35-year-old. Yeah, because you didn't know what you were doing when you were marketing, so you attracted this wide swath of people. I did too. So don't focus on who you currently serve, because that will be wider because you weren't narrowed down with your marketing. I was there, we were all there, it's super common. So when you make this decision, don't focus on who you currently serve. Focus on who you want to serve. So examples, we see the sports performance world is in like this new growth surge right now, where we have, many of you know, we partnered with Graham Wilkerson on the Athletes Acceleration franchise. He has 5 locations that he owns himself. 4 of them run from 4 to 8 p.m. only, nothing in the morning, 4 to 8 p.m., and all 4 of them will do 500K this year. Each. We have Jeremy Longchamp, who many of you know, up in Maine with me. He works only with soccer athletes. From 3 to 8 p.m., only soccer athletes, and he did 60-something K last month. He's buying a second location right now. He just closed on it, actually opening up a second location. So that's a sports performance example. We have folks like Luke Sullivan, who many of you know, out in Arizona. Luke exclusively works with the 50-plus population, but even deeper than 50-plus, people that are like, really should probably be in physical therapy. Like, they're really not great, They're highly injured. They are like borderline clinical. And that's all he works with. And he charges a premium for it. And he technically has 2 locations. They're right next to each other. I think of them as 2 locations because they're not connected. But my point is, and you all hopefully have those examples as well, but the gyms that are doing really well with marketing right now are only talking to one particular avatar, and they don't talk about anybody else. And they go 3 to 5 layers deep. So what do I mean by 3 to 5 layers? What I mean by that is age is only one layer. What are the pain points of that age? So 50 plus, cool. Is it the 50 plus that still wants to be a weekend warrior athlete and is still wanting to, be super active? Or is it like the 50 plus that just your pitch is, hey, 2 days a week, 45 minutes, just preserve what you got, don't age as fast as what you might if you don't do this, more of the longevity focus. Still the same age that I'm speaking to, very different messaging. Very different messaging. And I don't think I added this, but I thought about this on the plane ride down. So how many of you here use AI with your messaging? A little bit? Oh, cool. So I would encourage that, right? I'm not going to sit up here and say, like, don't use AI. I use it every day. I don't get all fancy like some of you do with building stuff. Here's my one, from my point of view, here's my one filter that I would run through, is the ability to make sure that your messaging, and what I mean by messaging are the words that you're putting out there. So that means your emails, your text messages, your Facebook ad copy, the stuff you put on a flyer when you go to an event, any words that you put out there. They need to speak specifically to that avatar and specifically sound like you. And my concern, and I think the cool kids use the word AI slop, is like, I read some of your stuff and I'm like, that does not sound like you. Like, I know you. That doesn't sound like you. I know when that was built with AI. And I think it's hurting a lot of your messaging. And I say you as an industry, not like the 17 of you in this room, right? I think it's hurting a lot of the messaging in this industry, and it's building. Pat did a presentation to the boardroom group about competition, and it used the term trust a lot in the presentation. We're in a climate right now where there's not a lot of trust, right? It takes a lot to get a client and a potential client, a lead, to trust us. And although 55-year-old, 65-year-old, 75-year-old Susie might not know that's AI, there's the layer below that, which is, that doesn't sound authentic. And that's my biggest concern with many gym owners using AI, is they're using it as the check the box, I sent it out, but it's not effective. Like, there's a big difference between effort and effectiveness. So this is something that I'm working with my team on specifically in more than just demand, but in all aspects. Like, your effort is very appreciated, but like, if you're not effective, we got to change. Like, you either got to go or we got to change, because you can be the nicest human being in the world and I appreciate your hard effort, but if it's not effective, it doesn't matter. And it's the same thing with your marketing. Like, you've hopefully gotten to the point where you know what, or you start, you have the marketing plan that we give you, you start to tweak it and you're implementing, which is great. That's like step one. But then taking a second step, that saying 2 extra steps, and saying, was this actually effective? Like, cool, I sent out the emails. Did anybody reply? Well, is it the messaging that I was saying? Were they not aligned with it? Is it a different way that I need to communicate? Because it's probably, just to humble you a little bit, it's probably not the strategy, because there are other people with the strategy that it works. So usually it's your messaging. Like, if I'm going to default to fixing something, it's usually that the messaging is too generic. That's usually the first variable with marketing that I fix, is the strategies work. We have people that are crushing it with Facebook ads. We have people that are crushing it with email. We have people that are crushing it with text. We have people that are crushing it with fish bowls. You can pick any of the strategies that we put in the marketing plan. The reason why I have them in there is they either work for me or they work with one of you or multiple of you. So it's not that those strategies don't work. It's usually that the messaging is too broad. So narrow in your messaging. Last story before I move on from this. I shared this on a call, and I think it's a very great call. I know Fred's going to be talking about this tomorrow. We have a client that we run ads for that is in California, a very competitive landscape, and he is running ads basically to like the 50 strong kind of longevity market. And his ads are he may be our best performing agency client that we have right now, if not probably in the top 3. And if you look at why that's working right now, yes, there's some specificity to the ad copy and things like that. But the reason why I think it's working is because this guy is like the mayor of his town. Everybody knows he exists. Nobody does not know who Greg is. He is out in town every weekend at any event. He implements the grassroots stuff that we talk about. And he is the true mayor of fitness in his town. So it's not that we're some magician on the ad side. It's that people that see his ads saw him at the coffee shop or saw him at the school events. So when we talk about the strategies that you implement, one of the biggest themes we're seeing across the board in the current landscape is it's nearly impossible to attribute a lead to one source. What I mean by that is I sent out this email, I didn't get any responses, or I ran this Facebook ad and I didn't get any good leads. It's almost, you used to be able to attribute leads to sources. And what I mean by that is that lead came from Facebook, this lead came from email. And you used to be able to attribute. That was a very common thing in the landscape, is attribution. And in the current landscape, I spend this much time focused on where leads come from. 0. It just doesn't matter because I know that's not how people buy. And Pat's going to be talking about that in his presentation. But it's really making sure that we're implementing the specific messaging so that no matter where you go in your town, whether you are at the coffee shop and you see a fishbowl, maybe you don't enter that. Maybe you hop on Google and you see our Google ad, or you see our Google My Business profile, you don't click on that. You open up Facebook while you're in line at Starbucks, you see that, you don't click on that. And then all of a sudden you're driving by, you see my sign because I'm in a good location where I have driving visibility. And then all of a sudden 3 weeks later you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, you know what, Susie, you really need to do something. And then it was not the Facebook ad, it was not Google, it was not any of those strategies. It was just the culmination of all that Susie remembered you, and so maybe she went to your website on the ride home, after the doctor's appointment and filled out your website form. And you're like, all my leads come from my website. But in reality, she would have never known you existed if you didn't do those other strategies. So that, if I were to summarize how marketing is currently working in the landscape, is that. So the 3 that I primarily focus on every month, nailing, no questions asked, is going to be the 3-2-1 on the marketing plan, which is your newsletters, your engagement emails, and picking your deadline driven. So those are delivered via email and via text message, and those are on every monthly marketing plan. And again, for sake of presentation, I don't have time to break down, like I'm happy in Q&A or in your individual sessions to break down for you what these would look like. But the 3-2-1 on the monthly marketing plan every month, the 5 R's, which is how you're facilitating referrals, how you're reaching out to former clients with reconnecting, what you're doing in the community to build relationships, collecting Google reviews, right? The 5 R's every month in the marketing plan. And then some type of paid traffic. Because the reality is, if people are buying online, at this point it's pay to play, whether you like it or not. And so Meta, Google, combination of both. I want to be there when people go into that app or they go on the internet. I need to be there. And unfortunately, whether we want to like it or not, we have to pay to play. So we know they're not going to see our organic content. We know if I'm on Google, if I'm paying a little bit, I probably get seen at the top. If I'm running Facebook ads, I know that when they go on Facebook or Instagram, they will see my stuff. And it's going to be higher, it's going to be more expensive than it used to be, but that's just the game. That is the level of the game right now. And so if you want to play the game, that's the level we got to get to. So essentially, two fixes on the constraint for demand. You have going deeper with your messaging for your ideal client, who you want to serve going forward, making sure your messaging is really dialed into that, not generic, not slop, and then implementing the monthly marketing plan. So we'll do questions at the end, so write down questions just for sake of time and presentations and all that, or recordings and all that stuff. So conversion, and please write down questions because we'll get to all of them. For conversion, so constraint number 2 is conversion. This, I think, is probably, if I were to summarize the industry right now in our kind of collective group, this is probably the biggest constraint. Is you've started to implement marketing, you're generating leads, but not a lot of them are responding. So there are 2 major things that we need to work on. I was refreshed to see in your submissions, I had asked a question, do you use automatic members or some version of high level? And I believe everybody uses either automatic members or some version of high level, which is great to hear. So the reason why I say that is the dominant platform right now to organize your leads. Many of you that have followed me for a long time, you know that I used to be the spreadsheet lead tracker, right? And I was all about the spreadsheet and, just keeping up with times, right? High level and automatic members is the dominant platform. I will say, now having access to all of your accounts, it is kind of like, I think about it like creating a program, right? You create an awesome program for a client, but the client never does the program. The software is there. You got to use the software. You got to use it every day. Like every single day we are in our automatic members, every day. Conversations tab and moving opportunities. That is 100% what we do every day, all day, is responding to every conversation that pops up and keeping our pipeline and our opportunities organized. Now, again, we can do a whole separate, because I'm trying to talk about all 5 constraints. If you feel that's a constraint of yours, I'm happy to help out, and I'm sure Matt can add value, I'm sure others can add value of how they organize for you. I will say that we are keeping it very, very simple, where it's basically when they come in, they're a hot lead, and when they respond, they're now over to engaged. So I can keep track of my hot leads, I can keep track of my engaged, which means they're in conversation, and then I move them to book. And once they're at book, they've booked an appointment, and then I move them to one. That, if it's more complicated than that, in my opinion, it's unnecessarily complicated. And again, the takeaway with, this is not like an automatic members training, the takeaway I would say is, like, if it's helpful, I don't expect this to be your case because we're obviously a bigger operation. But we have 1.5 employees. What I mean by that is a full-time and a part-time employee that their entire day is spent in automatic members, 60 hours a week, all day. Conversations, follow-up, old leads, reactivations, everything. Now, granted, we have soon to be 5 locations, so it's a much higher volume. But my point is, you probably have somebody that should be in there like 10 hours a week, just replying to conversations, making sure the pipeline's clean, going back. Like a big thing we do is we go back. If we followed up with all of our hot leads, most of you have leads from all these old months that never responded, never converted. Just because it's a new month doesn't mean I'm not going to keep bugging you. So keeping that automatic members fresh and using, and then installing the follow-up framework. All of you have the same follow-up framework that we use. I don't think it's perfect. We're always fine-tuning it. But if you don't have a follow-up framework, some version of that should be installed. That follow-up framework has 3 prongs to it. It has automated emails, automated texts, and checkpoints of when to call. Automated text, automated emails, and checkpoints of when to call. And yes, 80% of your leads will communicate with you via text message. I actually think, I haven't looked at it recently, but I would argue it's actually closer to 90%. And so, I mean, certainly make sure you're texting, for sure. That to me is a no-brainer at this point, at this stage. But understand it's kind of going back to the marketing stuff where, the rising tides lift all ships, right? My emails, I'm not responding, my leads are not responding to them via email, but I know when they're in their inbox, they're seeing my name. I know that right now when I'm done this presentation and I look at my phone, if I have a voicemail, I'm not going to call that person back. I didn't answer their phone, but I at least read the transcription of the voicemail. And so the power of the voicemail is like probably the most underutilized thing right now. We do a ton of voicemail drops. If you don't know how to do voicemail drops and automatic numbers, just Google it for ChatGPT or Claude. Just say, how do I do voicemail drops in high level? They're very effective, but also manually calling. Manually calling so they see that phone ring, they see the missed call from the number, and they of course authentic. Like a big thing nowadays, it's always been a big thing, but it's just more important nowadays, is making sure that this is legit and real, and I'm actually talking to a human. And so you can't facilitate that via text or email, we have to call. So just to summarize, the calls and the emails, in my opinion, force a higher response rate to the text messages. So text, email, call, don't measure the success on did they answer the email or the call. Both of those strategies authenticate the brand as a whole and facilitate higher response rates on text messages. Okay. So follow-up is a huge thing. What we're looking for is between 20 and 30% of your leads to come in for your appointment. 20 to 30% of your leads. So if you're generating 30 leads, 10 of those leads should be coming in. So again, big growth opportunity. I spend zero time thinking about the 70% that don't respond. Zero time. What I mean by that is no mental bandwidth. If you don't engage, I'm going to move on to the next lead. I'm not going to dwell. I'm not going to say, what could I have done differently? Now, if 90% of your leads aren't responding, that's probably what you're saying, right? Because we have to look at things holistically. If you are getting 20 to 30% of your leads to come in, that means you are good at follow-up, which means the 70% are never going to respond no matter what you do. So don't focus on the 70%. Focus on the 20 to 30%. On the flip side, if you have 50 leads and only 5 responded, that's probably a sign of one of two things. One, we can definitely beef up the follow-up, and 2, you probably need to diversify source. Meaning all of your leads were probably coming from Meta, and Meta's current percentage of conversion right now is somewhere between 5 and 8%. 5 and 8% of leads are responding. So do the math, right? Not saying Meta's not bad. We spend thousands a month on Meta. It gives us good leads. We nurture them. I don't expect them to buy today. I expect some to tell me to F off. I expect some not to speak English. I just expect that. Like that is a big thing if you're running Meta ads, is that's just a normal problem we've chosen. All right. With retention. So 3 things with retention, really 2 if I were to boil it down. Number 1 is I need, and we're going to now get into like the actual operating of your model. I need a clear set of standards that outlines what a session should look like from start to finish. So from the time a client walks in the door, it's a choreographed experience. It's not random. So examples. When a client comes in, what are you saying to them? Because you are probably super nice and amazing at what you do, and you greet them and you ask them questions and you check in with them, and you just have your general flow that you do with every new client. Well, the challenge becomes is as you grow, you have these other awesome humans with you, and these other awesome humans are not very good at asking the same questions. And so all of a sudden, Susie forgets to get greeted. And all of a sudden, Susie walks out the door without a check-in. And then 3 months later, Susie canceled, and you start to ripple effect that, and your retention goes down the shitter. So session standards is not exercise selection. That's your programming system. This is not like you're going to goblet squat for 3 sets of 10. This is what do we say when clients get greeted? What are we asking during the warm-up? What kind of questions are we asking during the warm-up? And we give our coaches frameworks. So I'm not a fan of scripts. I'm a fan of frameworks. What I mean by that is I'm not going to turn you into a robot. You are not going to like say word for word for word for word the same thing every time, but you're going to understand core standards. So an example of a standard, when a client walks in the door, they are greeted by first name. That's a standard. If you do not greet a client by first name, I will fire you. Not the first time, but after correction, if you continue to say, hey, how are you? Not, hey, Ryan, thanks for coming in. That's a standard of our business, is you come in, you are greeted by first name every single time. An example of another standard, when we are in warm-up, you will ask specific questions based upon we use an acronym, I still don't love it, but it works. Many of you might remember it, called the PIG acronym. And the PIG acronym is Program, Injuries, and Goals. So coaches are in the warm-up, because that's like your slowest, most conversational time in a session typically. In the warm-up, they are required to check in on program, injury, and goals. So I'm not scripting what you say, but I am setting a standard that you are going to check in on program, injuries, and goals. Meaning, here's what I have planned for you today. Are you good with that? Based upon what I hear, do I need to change anything? Injuries, hey, how's that shoulder feeling? Goals, tying back to what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it helps your goals. So this creates standards, which basically creates not lazy coaches. And so that would be an example of a standard, is warm-up. When you get into your working sets, and I'm just sharing some of our standards. You all have my session standards, so you can model it based upon that. Other examples of session standards would be in the working sets. So examples, we have standards called, we use acronyms for everything so that coaches can remember them. So examples would be like the 5 Ps. So you're prepared for your session, you're punctual, you're present, can go on and on, right? So we pull that out and train that. Other examples, we have one we call show, tell, do, which means for an exercise with a client, we show them how to do it, we tell them, and then we watch them do it. We have a 3-rep rule, which means we never let a client do the first 3 reps without a set of eyes on them. So those are all standards. And I can go on, but my point is, your team, if you have a team, that's really my ultimate focus with them, is I need you to live up to these standards. The last standard I would probably double down on is making sure you have a clear standard for when they leave. When they leave, what are you saying? So we have something we call the value question, which is a redundant question that is something along the lines of, do you feel stronger? Did you get stronger today? Something around strength. Because we know for 100% of our clients, if they came in for 45 minutes, they're going to walk out feeling stronger. So it's a bit of a psychological human behavior question, because I want them to reinforce that they just made a good decision. And most importantly, they're answering that question with a coach interaction. They're not slipping out the door without a coach interacting with them. So this is going to tie into constraint number 5, which is your team. All of us, and this, again, I'm not trying to like bash AI. I use it every day. But this is where like, you could take my session standards and you could go in 2 seconds, plug it into Claude and make your own session standards. And that is amazing. It's also useless. And I say useless because if it just sits there as a Google Doc and we don't train the team on the session standards, we don't practice these session standards, we don't have them demonstrate that they know it, then that's where like your team is not reading the Google Doc. They're not printing it out every session and being like, what am I gonna say today, right? That's completely unrealistic and frankly not fun. But if we're meeting with our team on a regular basis, if we're reinforcing the same standards over and over and over again, it's frankly less about new and more just about picking your core standards and like, we're gonna practice these every week. You're gonna demonstrate, I'll be a client, take me through the warm-up. And I know you probably know how to do a squat to stand, and you can demonstrate a squat to stand all day long, but are you asking me about my program, my injuries, my goals, right? So pick a core set of standards that you want to have focus on, and you just essentially drive it home till the team starts rolling their eyes at you, and you just probably touch the surface. The second part of retention is making sure people feel important. So this is your accountability and your recognition system. And that's what I said, there's two or three. Accountability and recognition, in my opinion, are kind of like brother and sister. They go hand in hand. They can't really exist without each other. So accountability would be, how are you implementing things like, and again, you all have these playbooks. Like if you're not aware, I'll give them to you before I leave today. Accountability playbook, recognition playbook, session standards, marketing plans. Again, that's really not the problem. The problem is implementing these and getting them, I shouldn't say the problem, the challenge. The challenge is implementing. Accountability is things like, the most basic one we love is an at-risk report. That's a Monday report pulled every week. Who didn't show up last week? Making sure we reach out to them, try to get them back on track, right? It's just monitoring attendance, however you want to do that. We have to have a way as we grow to monitor attendance to make sure clients are coming in and make sure they don't kind of fall through the cracks. So that would be your accountability. And then recognition is, how are we celebrating, right? So making sure we have some systematic way to celebrate. Now, that could be things like many of you have done versions of the frequent sweaters board. Our new one is the milestone mountain. So we have a mountain at every facility, and there's different milestones of visits, and they have a little name tag that they get, and they get to climb the mountain every time they get to a new visit. The recognition playbook has several ideas. I think the key is, when we strip apart, what we're really trying to facilitate in this section, in my opinion, is culture, right? Culture is a very, it's a word that people are like, what does that actually mean? In my opinion, culture is all about rituals and traditions and language. Rituals, tradition, and language. So I want to instill, all of my clients should know what the frequent sweaters is. All of my clients should know Milestone Mountain. I want to pick 3 to 5 core rituals and traditions that I build recognition around, and just rinse and repeat that month after month. So if you take culture outside of the fitness industry and you look at different cultures, like the Italians, they speak a certain language, they eat a certain food, they have certain traditions, versus the French, right? Those are different cultures. The gym industry is, it's humans, it's the same thing, right? So pick your 3 to 5 accountability and recognition traditions, and make sure, this is where hopefully, I know it can feel overwhelming, but hopefully it feels less overwhelming in the sense of, once you pick your 3 to 5, it's just making sure every month those get implemented. So for us, every month it's frequent sweaters board, Milestone Mountain, and holding up your visit boards. Those are our core 3. And every month we're making sure whoever's due that is getting it done. So it's less about new things and just more about making sure that clients are getting recognized. Your goal to know if that's an issue. So if you're okay, is this a constraint of mine? This number used to be 3%. I've recently, in the last year or so, increased it to 5%. Just given the landscape, people have more options, people are less patient, they're less loyal, frankly. And so the common churn we see right now, I would say outside of sports performance, is around 5% monthly churn, which means if you have 100 clients, you should expect 5 people to leave every month. That means you're good. So if you're losing 10, that means that this is an area I would probably put a little bit more focus on.
Sport performance
Much higher. Yeah, much higher in the sense of it's very seasonal. So your sports performance, I mean, in a month where you're starting fall sports, you're going to potentially lose a boatload. So you might even be, or I would say another exception to that rule would be, I mentioned Luke out in Scottsdale, my very seasonal markets, like he loses 70 clients every summer because they all go to their, cooler climate, right? So if you have a very, very seasonal market, whether that's sports performance or one of those special pops, it's going to be, what I'm looking at is the churn rate on an average and the churn rate from this time last year. So for example, I try not to compare churn in May to churn in April. I compare churn in May of this year to May of last year. Because every May has like, for most of you right now, unless you're a weirdo in New England, school is getting out, right? And so that has its own kind of schedule changes. In New England, we don't get out till the end of June, third week in June. June, I think it's 17th this year, right? So like we're still in school mode. It's not summer yet. Like we're in a completely different schedule, and even if you don't work with those populations, it still has an impact just because of how culturally it's a part of the community. So again, I'm comparing May of this year to May of last year. And I would argue, if I'm making general statements, that this is probably not the biggest bottleneck. Is it something you want to improve? Of course. It's probably not the biggest, and I would say it becomes the biggest. There's a correlation to this becoming a problem the bigger your team gets. That's probably the better way to think about it. If you are a solopreneur or you have one or two team members, it's pretty easy to self-control or self-choreograph the experience. So this is probably not a huge issue for you. Versus if you have everybody implementing things for you and you're not training, this is probably a bigger thing that I would focus on. So constraint number 4 is your delivery and your capacity. And this is really built on three things, which is the breakdown of your model and your pricing. So starting with pricing, this is just making sure that you are priced appropriately for your model. The easiest way to determine that is to figure out what your average client is paying. So you take your revenue, divide it by how many active clients you have. That's your ARM, that's your average revenue per member. And that tells you what your average client is paying. And that tells me if we're priced right. Because most of our clients at this point, when I say clients, I mean all of you, your current pricing is usually not bad. Like your market pricing for current people, new people coming in the door today, is usually pretty good. That used to be an issue. Like when I first started getting into the coaching side, the business coaching side, we would have to revamp current price structures immediately. And although that sometimes still happens, it's usually people are like, okay, yeah, I know I got to charge more, and I'm just going to do it for new people going forward. But if you've been around for a long time, you have all these current clients paying less. When you look at your ARM is probably substantially lower than what your current pricing is. And there's no easy way to do this. I probably do it, I would say 3 to 4 times a month for all of you, for some particular client. I think probably half of you in this room I've helped with price increases. It's a necessary evil at this point. I don't want to say evil, it's just necessary. Like it's just par for the course, and most of us, like Holly shared in the very beginning, went way too long. We've all done it. We go way too long without price increasing, and now we have to play this huge catch up. And so we've basically made a decision with our business that every year we're just going to increase prices like clockwork. Every year we're just going to increase price. And what we increase it will vary year to year, but every year we're going to be increasing pricing. And for current clients, it's just how much do you want to rip the Band-Aid off, right? We've had people that we've done what I would consider to be marginal price increases would be somewhere between 5 and 15%. I would consider that nowadays pretty marginal. So like you're probably not going to lose many people. 5 to 15%, just start to get those longer term clients up to par. And then something more substantial would be like a 20 to 30% price increase, which we have done. We did it ourselves. Many of you know Dom, based in Florida. I just did that with Dom. He had like 25 long-term clients that were paying like sub $100 a month for his training. And we bumped him up like 50%. And he had, I believe it was like 30% that stuck. But he already, based upon new clients that month and those clients that are paying more, is making more than all the people that left. So that's usually what happens, right? I know it's hard to do. I know it's painful, but I've very rarely, and I honestly can't think of a single one in recent times where somebody is like, I regret doing a price increase. So model is going to be how you deliver. So that's, do you do semi-private? Do you do small group? Do you do large group? Deciding that model and picking it and perfecting it. And as many of you have heard me say, I'm a big fan of running one model and one model only. And then making sure you have your scheduling and your programming built out. Scheduling and programming nowadays with tech, with AI, with apps should take up 0 of your time. That's a big thing that we focused on. This is the side where we want to spend. We used to spend an enormous amount of time scheduling and programming. And this is the side where I would lean hard into tech. I would lean hard into picking an app. I would lean hard into making sure this is smooth and frictionless, both for you, your team, and your clients. What I mean by that is scheduling. Clients should be able to do it on their own, on an app. You shouldn't be having to manually schedule. You shouldn't be fielding questions from clients. Hey, I want to move this session to this session. If that's happening, that's a great sign that your scheduling system can be improved. We want to spend 0 time on scheduling. And then on the same side with programming. When most of us got into this industry, programming was unique. It was a secret sauce. It was something special that we delivered. And maybe that wasn't even true, but most of us thought that, myself included. And now they can go on to their AI of choice and say, hey, I have this equipment in my garage, and here's my list of equipment, here's my age, here's my goals, build me a program for the next year, and within 30 seconds, they have a 12-month program. So programming, the actual like X's and O's of what you deliver, should take up 0. And 0 obviously is unrealistic, but like plan it out for the year and be done with it. The time spent on that is, the way I think about it, time spent on those 2 things can be time spent on demand, conversion, follow-up, actually growing the business. And then the 5th and final constraint is us as owners and our team. So the first thing with fixing this constraint is we need to know our numbers. All of you have access to the scoreboard that has the top 10 numbers that I like to track every week, and some of you even have the nice, kind accountability of sending them to me every week, which I do appreciate. It's not required. The Friday 5 is required, which I continue to encourage. And usually if you're engaged like you are at these meetings, you're also, the people that aren't doing the Friday 5s are also not at these meetings, not on Zoom, so we won't go down that rabbit hole of problems. But the Friday 5 is our accountability for you. If you're accurately filling that Friday 5 out, the first question is, which metric is off track this week? That should not be a guess. That should be looking at my scoreboard and saying lead, conversion. Just so you know how I use that, if you ask a question later on in your check-in, I will, as you all know, I will email you. If you don't ask a question, what I'm looking at is generalizations of the check-in. So is 70% of the check-ins a lead problem? That helps us plan presentations and things like that. So that's what I'm looking for, is commonalities in the coaching programs of where's most people's problems. But you do need a scoreboard. The easiest rhythm I teach is every Friday. You have a recurring task on your calendar, just like you have that 9 a.m. session to train. At 10 a.m., you have a 30-minute block for scoreboard, and you're just reviewing your constraint. So filling it in and then determining constraint. Now, here's a quick side note. I would say, we'll call them mixed, if you're curious, mixed feelings on dashboards that tell you your numbers versus manually updating your numbers every Friday. And part of what I enjoy is the pain. This is like from a tactic perspective. If I am just shown that I have 35 leads versus I have to go seek out and plug in I have 35 leads, that to me hits very different. Now, if it doesn't hit different to you, then by all means have a dashboard that auto-populates all your numbers to you. The problem I would have with that is what do you do because of that? Like, I want the pain of like, ugh, geez, we only have 10 appointments this month. Our goal is 15. We got 3 days left in the month. Is who's going to be aggressive these next 3 days to go get those next 5? It's the effort that we put in based upon those numbers. Filling out the scoreboard, that's not the effort. But if we have it auto-populated, do we not look at it as much? Are we emotionally connected to those numbers where it's like, oh, leads are off track, I'm going to make sure I go implement something on the marketing plan tomorrow. Or, hey, it's the 27th of the month, there's 4 days left in the month, we need 2 more appointments on Thursday, Friday to hit our goal, let's go chase those. Am I doing that versus just kind of being a little bit more passive? So scoreboard would be number one, knowing your numbers. Other things in this area, and this is where, depending upon the size of your team, some of this is not super important, but I want to make sure you at least know they exist. The CARS acronym, I would say, is my current favorite acronym that I use with our coaches. It has become very beneficial to them. So the CARS acronym is coaching, accountability, recognition, and skills. So that is your role. When you are a team member of ours, you are responsible for coaching, accountability, recognition, and we will have time every week where we improve your skills, i.e. meetings, practice. So it really, in a simple acronym, summarizes their role and helps them understand that it's not just coaching. Yes, coaching is first, and it's the most important, and we're going to get better at it, and we're going to have standards for it, and et cetera. But you're also going to do the accountability stuff that we talked about earlier. You're also going to do the recognition stuff, and here's the standards for that. And we're going to have, an hour or two every week where we're going to do some practice, some meetings, some role playing, etc. So the CARS acronym is probably my new favorite way to break down, because coaches' roles, if you've tried, coaches' roles are pretty hard to break down and organize, because it's like, what is good coaching? Like, how do I clarify that as a role? And so the CARS acronym is really been helpful, specifically for new hires coming in, so that they understand, like, this is not an environment where you're just going to show up, coach your 9 a.m. session, and leave. If that's what you're looking for, probably not the right fit. 515s. 515s are your one-on-ones. So this is your 15-minute meeting with your team member every week. Now, I'll try to wrap up here by 11, but let me share a story. So many of you know we have 3 locations. We're closing on our 4th one next week and our 5th one in the fall. So we'll have 5 locations by the end of the year. Each location has a head coach. And then under that, they have coaches that they're responsible for. So when we opened up location 2 and location 3, which was very quick, like within 6 months of each other, location 1, which has been the one we've had for 15 years, we put a head coach in place there. And obviously, Josh and I were very heavily focused on location 2 and 3 and getting those up and running and stabilized and yada, yada, yada. Well, fast forward 6 months, and location 1 is like taking a dive, a nose dive. And I was like, what is good? I mean, we saw it, but every week we're like, what is going on? It just kept snowballing, snowballing. Come to find out, the root cause was not operations, it was not systems, it was not playbooks, it was the head coach. We had our first, I've never done it, we had our first demotion, I think that's the word. We took our head coach and brought her down to a coach because she wasn't fireable, like she wasn't a bad coach, she was just not great at this stuff. Meaning, examples, this is the ripple effect of not doing these things. We found out after a couple months that she was doing these 515s, but she was doing them randomly. Like, hey, Ryan, I got 7 minutes. Come over here. Let's meet real quick. Versus 515s are supposed to be every Monday at 10 a.m. We're going to meet for 15 minutes, review last week, go over this week. right? It's on the calendar. It's like an appointment. So again, we'll take ownership, like, we should have caught this earlier. But those examples, team meetings, they're structured, they're thought out, we spend just as much time prepping for a meeting as we do actually facilitating. I would argue even more. It's like for those of you that coach, Pat and I talk about this with practice plans. Like we spend more time planning the practice than we do actually running the 90-minute practice, right? And so what topics are you going to talk about with your team? Is the playbook that you're teaching from up to date so that you're teaching them from the playbook? That's like the prep that goes into the meeting. And I'm not bashing her. She's still with our team. She's a phenomenal coach. But she was the example, I believe it's called Peter's Principle, where you get promoted to a level of incompetence. She was a phenomenal coach, so Josh put her in place as head coach. She was awful, and she's the first to admit, she was awful on like the back end management, like making sure everybody gets their meetings done, making sure dashboard's up to date, like that kind of organization. You put her in a room like this and she would be your best friend, right? Great coach, terrible manager. So I say that to share the story of this stuff has a ripple effect on things like conversion, retention, et cetera. Because that was the main reason why that location took a dip, is because we couldn't outgrow retention. Retention was going this way. We were trying to create more demand, but we would gain 12, lose 15, gain, 13, lose 15. It was just constantly like that. So what fixed it was re-implementing a lot of these team standards in that location. So 515s are regular with the new head coach. Everybody knows the CARS acronym. Everybody understands the standards there, and everybody's doing team meetings. Your team meeting, for those of you that have a team, I do recommend a team meeting, even if it's once a month, even if it's bi-weekly. I think it's more just about the rhythm, and it's all about demonstration. The entire meeting is demonstration. I used to use the term role-playing, and then I learned from my team after talking to them that they hated role-playing. They're like, this is awkward. And I was like, well, that's great that you're sharing that, but you still like need to show me that you do it. I was like, how about we demonstrate as coaches, how about we demonstrate? Like, it's less going to be like, let's get up in the front of the room and role play a session, and more like, demonstrate to me how you greet a client. And it's more of like they're walking through it, less like acting. So if it's helpful, we've shifted, and all of this is just words, but I always try to pay attention to like, what words does my team like? Which words do they kind of hang on to? And they seem to have more interest in demonstrating, hey, let's demonstrate how we're greeting a client. Let's demonstrate how we're modifying this exercise. Let's demonstrate to the team what happens if a client walks in with this injury. What are we doing? So that's all team meetings are, is demonstration. Pick a couple topics that we're all going to demonstrate. And then the final one, and this one is my personal favorite. I still do this with our entire team. So we have 14 team members at our locations. And so every Friday, I send out a team memo. And it's basically like recap what I thought went well over the last week and get them to look forward to the next week. Because team members, I'm trying to set up, like we have a program, as you all know, most of you partake in, called Win the Week. And that's really my mindset with our team, is I need you to win next week. That's it. Like, it's my job to think about next month. It's my job to think about a year from now. I just want to make sure you have a good week next week. That's it. So the team memo, a couple tricks that I found with the team memo is, one, you got to mix up the format. So sometimes I do written. A lot of times I use Loom. I'm a big fan of Loom. Maybe you all have fancier text than Loom, but I'm a big fan of Loom. I just screen share like a playbook or something like that I want to review with the team. Something that doesn't really need a meeting, more just like, hey, I want to share this, but then they see me on camera talking through it, and they can listen to 2.5 times speed and kind of rip through it pretty quickly. It should take no longer than like 2 to 3 minutes. It's not like this 20-minute video that they have to watch. But I send it out on Fridays, and here's the real kicker. Every Friday I ask 2 questions at some point. So either in the message or in the video, and I mix up between those formats, I ask 2 questions that they have to reply to. They have to reply with the answers. And it's usually, sometimes it's silly questions like, what Netflix show are you watching right now? or sometimes it's what's the answer to this, standard, right? But they have to reply. And so that obviously shows me that they're engaged and they're actually responding and reading to it. So it takes me a few minutes to whip up the memo. I don't use AI to write it. I literally just speak or write whatever's on my mind that I think the team needs to focus on. I try to give a couple shout outs to the team throughout it, and then, get in there and get it to them. That's how they finish out their week. All right, lastly, I think a lot of what we're all trying to get to is the true owner of your business, and not like I have to operate everything. And sometimes I think we don't fully understand what the owner's job of a business should be. So I'm going to end with that. And then we'll take a break. We'll get to questions and take a break. So there's really 3 stages in this industry. Stage 1 is you are the entire operation. You are the gym. You coach, you sell, you market, you do everything. Stage 2 is you run the gym, meaning you have teams that probably help cover sessions, but every decision runs through you. You are the one making all the decisions. You are the one still marketing everything, etc. Most of our clients are in stage 2. And then stage 3 is you actually just own the gym. You're the business owner and you have that risk and that reward. So whether you want to be 100% the owner and only the owner or not, I think it is important to understand that really the owner only has 4 roles. 4 key things that we're doing every day. Number 1 is I still to this day, and I don't ever foresee a day not owning marketing and growth. What I mean by that is every month I'm the one that creates the marketing plan. Every month I'm the one controlling what are the strategies we're implementing to grow. Now, to be clear, that does not mean that you have to be the one implementing all the strategies. You could have Fred run your ads, you could have your head coach do the fishbowl drop off, you could have, people contribute to the plan, but you are the one creating that plan. Obviously, key hires and culture. This is, again, more important as your team grows, but we still interview and hire every person. Doesn't matter. I don't ever foresee, regardless of how many locations we have, I'm still the one that makes the final call on if this person's hired. Obviously, financial oversight, I want to control the money. I will always control the money, and I will not let anybody else control the money. So that means that I know my weekly numbers, and I do not share logins with people that don't need them. You all hear stories of financial issues of all that business. But obviously knowing your numbers and having financial insight of cash flow and things like that. And then of course, the final one is showing up for your team, not for your clients. And this is the big shift, and this is how I personally know that a gym owner has gotten, if they desire to be the full owner, is they stop, and stop is probably not the right word. They transition out of talking about their clients and start talking about their team. They don't ever talk about clients, they only talk about the team. And to be clear, it does not mean that they don't appreciate the clients, it does not mean that they don't love their clients, it does not mean that they're not grateful for their clients, but they've poured so much into their team that they know that their team is taking care of their clients. So the owner's ultimate job is to take care of the team takes care of the clients. You cannot take care of both as you grow. As you grow, you do not have the capacity to take care of clients and team. It's impossible. So you got to choose based upon your delivery system, based upon your model. If you don't want that to be a constraint, you have to pour into your team to then allow them to focus on clients. And then again, you'll have this presentation, but if you are looking to delegate more, I did a whole previous training on delegating and elevating, so I linked it there at the bottom. And that's basically, making sure we understand that if we are the bottleneck, how we get out of it. Step 1, get it out of your head, get it down. That's the easy part nowadays. It used to be hard. Back in the day, y'all know when you used to have to hand type a Google Doc. That was, as the systems guy, kind of man, I used to have to hand type all this stuff. But nothing's written down. So let's get it documented, let's get it in a playbook, but then let's make sure that we hire people that implement that playbook, and we reinforce that playbook, we train that playbook. And playbook is the term that I use more. Like I don't use the term systems with our team. You guys know what systems are, so I'll use systems with all of you. But our team, they know the word playbook. Everything is a play, and a culmination of those is our playbook. Now, it's not physically anymore, right? It's on a Google Doc. But if you're a member of our team, just like most of you played sports, like you need to know the plays. You can't be on this team if you don't know the plays. So we hire people that they know their role, and ultimately, if you want to not coach as much, you have to be the worst coach in the room. You have to be the worst coach on your team. That was always my ultimate goal, is if I'm the worst coach on my team, that means, because I was like most of you, I think I was a pretty good coach. I thought I was a pretty good trainer. But if I'm the best one, then that's a problem, because that means that I haven't trained them up, I haven't spent enough time developing them, I haven't hired the right people, etc. And then of course, the hardest one, which is the mindset stuff, is you're afraid to let go. You're afraid to let go. You think that somebody's never going to do it as good as you. And I, at this point, just say we have plenty of examples of gyms that the owners do not coach a single session. The owners really focus on those 4 roles. And so if that's a goal of yours, because that's ultimately what we're trying to fix these constraints for, right? We're trying to fix these constraints so that we have freedom to do what we want. So if you are doing everything and you're afraid to let go, how I always look at it is I'm very competitive in the sense of, if you can do it, I think I can do it better. So in business, so if I see another gym that the trainer's not coaching, I'm like, well, if he can do it or she can do it, I can do it. And so we have plenty of examples, even in our ecosystem, of gym owners that used to do all the training and no longer do the training. So clearly it's possible. We just have to make sure that we implement and slowly fine-tune the constraints. So I know that was a lot. If you've heard me present, you know it's always a lot, but hopefully helpful.